The night of June 28th, 2025, began like any other. It was a Saturday, a night for quiet dreams and whispered secrets under a familiar sky. The moon was a perfect, polished coin of silver, hanging in the deep velvet of space. Children pointed at it from their bedroom windows, tracing its round shape with their small fingers. Lovers walked hand in hand along moonlit beaches, feeling its gentle, ancient light on their faces. It was a silent companion, a constant friend in the darkness, something we thought we understood. We saw its mountains and its seas of dust, the familiar face of the man in the moon. We never once considered that this face might not be a trick of light and shadow. We never imagined it could be a sleeping visage. Then, something changed. It was a subtle shift at first, so small that most people missed it. An astronomer in Chile, peering through his powerful telescope, was the first to see it. He adjusted his lens, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. The familiar craters, the old scars of cosmic collisions, seemed to ripple. It was like a stone dropped into a still pond, but the pond was the moon itself. He checked his equipment, his heart beginning to beat a little faster. The readings were impossible. The moon was not a dead rock. It was vibrating, humming with an energy that had no scientific explanation. He felt a cold sweat on his brow, the kind of primal fear that comes from seeing something that should not be. Across the world, others began to notice. On social media, the first trickles of confusion appeared. People posted blurry photos from their phones. "Does the moon look weird to you tonight?" one post asked. Another read, "I swear it's getting bigger." They were dismissed as jokes or hoaxes at first, the usual noise of the internet. But the posts kept coming, from Japan, from Egypt, from Brazil. The feeling spread like a virus. People stepped out onto their balconies and into their backyards, their eyes turning upward. The air grew still, the chirping of crickets faded away. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath, sensing that something ancient and fundamental was about to break. The light changed too. The soft, silvery glow that had comforted humanity for millennia began to feel different. It grew colder, sharper, more clinical. It was no longer the gentle light of a lantern, but the piercing beam of an eye, a single vast eye inspecting its domain. Shadows on the ground stretched and twisted into unnatural shapes. Trees looked like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. The familiar world was being painted in a new, terrifying light. It was the light of scrutiny, the light of a thing that was no longer sleeping, that was no longer just a rock in the sky. We were all insects under a magnifying glass, and the sun behind it had just been lit. The change was no longer subtle. It was undeniable. The great dark patch on the moon's surface known as the Sea of Tranquility began to move. It did not drift or float. It contracted. It focused. The dark mare, a place where humans had once walked, began to gather into a single, terrifying point. It was an iris, a pupil dilating in the blackness of space. The moon, our silent, beautiful moon, was opening its eye. It was a slow, deliberate act, an awakening that spanned minutes that felt like centuries. There was no sound, only the sight of this impossible transformation. It was a moment of pure, undiluted cosmic horror, a revelation that our place in the universe was not what we thought. The world's leaders were silent. What could they say? What announcement could possibly explain the impossible thing happening in the sky? All communication channels were flooded with the same images, the same terrified questions. Scientists offered theories, but their words were hollow, drowned out by the sheer visual terror of the event. Was it a celestial phenomenon? An alien entity? Or was it something far older, something that had been there all along, hiding in plain sight? The man in the moon was no longer a fairy tale. It was a god, and it was waking up from its long slumber. We had been living on the doorstep of a giant, and we had never even known it. Fear is a simple, powerful thing. It strips away everything else. People left their cars in the middle of highways, their engines still running. They spilled out of cinemas and restaurants, their faces pale, their mouths agape. They all looked up, united in a single silent scream. The moon's gaze was not angry, not hateful. It was something far worse. It was curious. It was the look of a being discovering a colony of ants in its garden. We were small, we were insignificant, and we had just been noticed. The feeling was a physical weight, pressing down on every soul on the planet, a pressure that came from 238,900 miles away. The eye did not blink. It simply stared. It was a perfect black circle against the luminous white of the lunar surface. It saw everything. It saw the pyramids of Giza and the skyscrapers of New York. It saw the vast, empty oceans and the teeming, crowded cities. It saw every single one of us. You could feel its gaze on the back of your neck, even when you were inside, hiding under a table. There was no escape. The moon was no longer a part of the night sky. It was the night sky. Its presence filled every corner of our awareness, a silent, watching God that had finally turned its attention to the children playing in its shadow. As the moon's eye remained fixed upon the earth, a profound and terrifying stillness fell over the planet. The usual hum of civilization began to die down, one piece at a time. The blinking lights of airplanes vanished from the sky as pilots, gripped by an instinctual fear, grounded their planes. The endless traffic of the world's great cities slowed to a crawl and then stopped completely. People abandoned their vehicles, not in a panic of running, but in a strange shared trance of awe and terror. They stood on rooftops, on bridges, and in open fields, their faces upturned. They were statues carved from fear, all part of a silent global congregation worshipping a new and terrible deity. The world's religions fell silent. Priests, imams, and rabbis looked up at the watching eye and had no words of comfort to offer. Their ancient texts had spoken of angels and demons, of gods in the heavens, but they had never described this. This was not a being of faith or mythology. It was a physical, undeniable truth hanging over their heads. It was a geological feature that had become a biological one. The sacred stories that had guided humanity for thousands of years seemed like children's tales in the face of this new cosmic reality. The eye in the sky did not judge or promise salvation. It simply watched, its presence a cold, hard fact that shattered every belief system on Earth. Nature itself seemed to cower. Animals grew quiet. In the jungles, the calls of nocturnal creatures ceased. In the countryside, dogs stopped barking and whined softly at their owners' doors, seeking a comfort that no one could provide. Even the oceans seemed to calm, the waves lapping at the shores with a gentle, fearful rhythm. It was as if the planet's own life force was shrinking away from the gaze of the celestial being. The world had become a very small room, and a giant had just walked in. The ecosystem of an entire planet was paralyzed by the simple, silent act of being observed by a power it could not comprehend. In this terrible silence, a new sound began to emerge. It was not a sound that traveled through the air, but one that bloomed inside the mind. It was a low, psychic hum, a feeling of being thought about. People clutched their heads, their eyes wide with a new kind of fear. It was the dawning realization that the moon was not just looking, it was thinking. Its thoughts were not in words or images we could understand. They were ancient, vast, and utterly alien. We were a curiosity to it, and its cold, passive thoughts were like a pressure on the human soul, a silent whisper that said, "You are small, and you are not alone." The dawn that followed was a strange and terrifying spectacle. The sun rose, but it brought no comfort. Its warm golden light seemed weak and fragile against the memory of the night. The moon did not set. It remained in the pale blue sky, its great black eyes still open, still watching. It was a permanent fixture now, a violation of the natural order. Day and night no longer mattered. The sun was a lamp, but the moon was a presence. The world had been altered forever. The simple comfort of looking at the sky was gone, replaced by a constant, nagging fear. We were now living in a fishbowl, and our owner was always there. The world did not end in fire and explosions. It ended in a quiet, creeping madness. People stopped going to work. Schools and governments ceased to function. What was the point of mortgages, of politics, of ambition, when a cosmic entity was watching your every move? Some people went mad, their minds unable to cope with the sheer scale of the truth. Others found a strange, new kind of faith, worshipping the moon as a god, holding silent vigils in the open, hoping for a sign that was never given. Society did not collapse, it simply dissolved. The intricate machine of human civilization ground to a halt because its operators could no longer look away from the sky. The questions were endless, and there were no answers. Was it always alive? Was our entire history, our evolution, just a dream it was having? Or did it wake up because of us? Because our noisy rockets and radio signals had finally disturbed its slumber? The mysteries were too vast for the human mind to hold. We were like ants trying to understand the gardener whose foot had just shaken their world. We could only scurry and wonder, our small intellects breaking against the shore of an infinite cosmic indifference. The moon did not seem to care about our fear or our worship. It just watched. Today is June 28th, 2025. One night has passed since the awakening, but it feels like a new geological age has begun. We are the children of the watching moon. We live under its unblinking stare, and we know our place. The world is quieter now. We walk softly. We speak in whispers. We look up at the sky, not with wonder, but with a deep and abiding terror. We are waiting. We do not know what we are waiting for. Perhaps for it to blink, perhaps for it to speak, or perhaps for it to finally grow bored of us. The age of humanity is over. The age of a new silent God has begun.